right. So it is May 17th, 2024. If you are catching this podcast on the replay, remember you can always watch live in our Facebook group where we will, interact if you have questions in the moment. This week we are talking about a couple different things that are essentially one topic. So frequency, EMFs, energy, and how all of that impacts health in both positive and negative ways. So this is our weekly Take Your Health Back Now podcast.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we've done a podcast on EMFs before, and we have done a podcast on frequency before, but they really all tie together. So we're coming from a different angle today. Several different topics that really are essentially the same topic, like Jenny said. So because I feel like the theme of this year's podcast is, in my mind, is that you really you don't have to know everything. Like, you don't have to understand all the systems of the body. You don't have to understand how everything functions. You don't have to understand, deep dive into all this stuff. You don't have to be a specialist, but you do have to have some knowledge in order to make it make sense. So I feel like a little bit of history and a little bit of knowledge on a topic, not that much. I mean, everybody doesn't have to be an expert on every single topic. I mean, we are not an expert on every single topic. You have to have that background knowledge so that what we're telling you makes sense. Because it is, when you talk about EMFs and radiation and energy, this affects everyone. It's kind of like when we did the glyphosate podcast. There's no escaping just because you think that you're healthy and, it's affecting everyone. It's affecting everything on the planet, including the planet.
Right. And this is, for us, kind of an unusual topic because there is a lot of this information out there. Like, if you want to go find the information, you probably can. It's just that this is a hard to understand topic. Like, the information that's out there tends to be very scientific or like very in detail on energy and frequency and wavelength and radiation. And there's like all these crazy equations and, you look at it and it kind of seems like, and then the information that kind of ties it together as far as EMFs and health tends to be not very informative. So there's like that middle information that makes it make sense, but also is actionable, is just kind of what we're trying to get across.
And it seems like the people, like most practitioners on the holistic side of things, natural side of things, are not talking about EMFs, or they are a little bit, or you have the people that are really a plethora of information. They've got so much information, but they come at it from an aspect of it's the EMFs only that are causing all of these health problems and disease. Right. And it's not. It's that big holistic view, like we always talk about. I mean, it may be a big part of the cause of yours, and it is a cause of everyone's total body burden, but so much else. Every podcast we've ever done this year, let's say, all of it adds to the total body burden. So EMFs also adds to the total body burden. So it's just not a standalone piece. So that's the other thing. So it always comes down to the missing information. That seems to be a theme we have going on too.
Right.
So we want to give you, more information to fill in the dots. Or if you think of it like a puzzle, we're giving you more pieces of the puzzle to fill in that whole picture, so that you can really make a huge impact on your health and everything else, right? So we're just going to dive in. So I did look this up before. I just told Jenny. So when we were talking about doing the EMF podcast a while ago, I had spent all this time looking up statistics, and I have a whole sheet of all these statistics and I can't find it. So I just wrote down a few today. So if you think about wireless everything is everywhere now, right? That's commonplace in everyone's lives, everywhere on the planet, really. And this has only been really the last 30 years, right?
As far as devices, electronic devices,
Right.
yeah.
As devices and phones and Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. It's basically been 3 decades, but really just 3 years, if that. And that's when it first started coming out. So it was just a little bit. And even computers. I remember when I was a kid, so maybe junior high. So I'm 54. So maybe I was 12, 13-ish. My dad was building these little computers and he was so excited about them. Because it was kind of like the first laptop computers. And
Right.
nobody had laptop. Nobody even heard of laptops. And he wanted us to be so excited about it. And I was like, it doesn't resonate with me. He was always so mad. But
Right.
that was 40 years ago. So anyway, my point is that this has come about in the relatively very near future, past. And just to give you an idea, so this just came out, say, 30 years ago. Now the statistics for the number of smart meters worldwide, so that would be your utilities, gas, water, electric. Not everybody has those on their house. You have at least one, maybe two or three. But the number of smart meters right now is 1.6 billion.
Right.
So it went from 0 to 1.6 billion.
That definitely wasn't in 30 years. That was probably in like 10 years.
Yeah, that was really just a short time. And they're trying to go to where all utilities have smart meters now.
Right.
So that number will grow. And then cell phones worldwide right now, the number is 8.6 billion.
Right.
But that's cell phones people are using. And then think of all of the ones that they've gotten a new one every year, or every couple of years. But the ones, I'm just talking about a waste perspective.
Right. Like they're not giving off EMFs while they're turned off, but still.
But an EMF load,
Yeah.
8.6 billion on top of the 1.6 billion smart meters. And then cell towers worldwide right now are roughly 10 million. And there are different kinds of cell towers. There's 4G, there's 3G, there's 5G, there's all kinds of, I don't even know what they all are. And then just electric vehicles, I looked up right now, there are 40 million, up from 22 million in 22. And electric vehicles, that's just been a few years that those have been out.
Right.
But the thing to remember with these EMFs, electromagnetic frequency or electromagnetic radiation, or radiation frequency, they all go by basically the same thing, different frequencies, different names, but it's an accumulative effect. So in your own home, you have a smartphone, your partner has a smartphone, maybe you have children, they have smartphones. Now you got 5 devices, the load is getting bigger. So you can see with all these billions of devices, how big that load is.
Right.
On it.
And the wireless devices probably have, like the bigger impact because of the way they work. So everything has energy. Everything living, you have energy. Electronics have electricity, which is energy. And then we have like solar energy and wind energy. Like everyone knows there's different types of energy out there, and we all have, as humans, you have electrical impulses. So do plants and animals, and you can look up all the information on what those frequencies are, and that's real. It's just hard to like conceptualize it because you can't see it. So imagine like, the little Easter chicks that you get, and they've got the 2 little metal pieces, and you put it on your hand, and now it chirps, right? Everyone's seen those. Or like more Halloween, they'll do like a ball, same thing. You hold it, lights up, because you have electricity. Your electricity is close.
Electricity, remember, sorry to cut you off, but I just thought of the one in science class, the big
Yes,
with the static, and then you touch it and all of a sudden your hair just sticks straight up.
right. Because okay, so your frequencies are matching. So that's how energy turns into electricity or usable energy. So you have a wavelength with, wavelength, think of a wave. And that size of that wavelength, either tight or low, is what the frequency is. So that's like how many times it's like spinning. Just to give you a little bit of background so you can understand.
Like nanosecond, or even if you think about in seconds, how many times that wave moves per second, and each device or just regular electricity or sound or radio or whatever has a different frequency, like Jenny was saying, and it moves at a different pace per second, and how it affects you.
So each of those frequencies match with a type of feeling, like that's also been studied. You can look at that. Lower frequencies are worse feelings, higher frequencies are better feelings. Everything that's alive has a frequency, the whole earth has a frequency, and then we resonate together like a tuning fork. So whatever you're near, your energy, maybe your frequency should be this. And now we've got all these devices with these really low frequencies. So our frequency is lowering kind of to match that because it's the biggest frequency in the room. Think of it that way. So, this is the part you can look up, you can dive into energy and frequency. It's really interesting if you're into math, but just understand energy has a frequency. Everything that is electronic has a frequency. And that's why you hear 5G, 4G, that's the gigahertz, that's the frequency. We had electronics prior to Wi-Fi. They're just their frequencies tend to be more standard and they don't go out as far. So we didn't have all of this exposure. So then we increased the electronics, we started using Wi-Fi, and that's why in the last 30 or 40 years, we've started to understand this impact.
Right. And if you look back in history, prior to, so the telegraph was our first big, electronic device, right? So prior to the telegraph, disease, sometimes we have people argue with us, and yes, there was disease and people died young, but it was because of sanitation issues, disease caused by unsanitary conditions and hardships. It was hard. No matter where you lived in the world, you had some major hardships where people just didn't live that long. But once we got more into the modern times, the sanitation issues got much better. So we didn't have disease anymore from that. And the hardships, we don't have that many hardships to what went on, centuries ago. And so then we got to where they rolled out the telegraph. And if you look back, where they rolled the telegraph out was along like railroad lines.
Right.
And then that was kind of along when the Spanish flu came out, and it was right when that rolled out. And then if you look at it, like if you kind of deep dive into that, you see that the people that were living a city life that maybe weren't as healthy because of all the pollution and all that kind of stuff, they were the ones that really got hit with the Spanish flu. And it was people that were near the telegraph lines. And then these farm kids that were living healthier lives, eating healthier food, they weren't so much affected, but it was along those telegraph lines, which is interesting. And then electricity rolled out. And then from then forward, that's when you really see this chronic disease start to, like, if you look at always a graph, like I wish I had the time to spend to make graphs, because if you look at from that time that those rolled out, and the graph of chronic disease that's coming in, it's rising, but at a slow pace. And then a few decades ago, when we get these wireless devices, now all of a sudden the graph of chronic disease and the amount of devices really just skyrockets up. But just like if you listen to our glyphosate podcast, you can watch the graph of the use of the glyphosate and chronic disease going up. It's the same with these electrical devices. And so again, which is it? The chicken or the egg that is causing the problems? It's everything.
Yeah.
And you can't just pick one thing. That's why you just can't pick one thing. But that's just kind of the history on our electricity use. And right now it's just like,
Yeah.
And you were talking about something and I was going to add to that. Oh, I can't remember. I think it's in my notes, so I'm sure I will think of it later.
Okay.
But anyway, but the EMF load right now, I mean, we still have electricity and everything else, but the EMFs, the wireless devices, is what's really causing this huge impact right now. That's the biggest load. But it can
like a big mesh network. Like we keep people
right.
think coverage is so great, but we are literally blanketing ourselves in constant exposure to these frequencies that we don't match with.
Right. And it is blanket means if you could see it, and there's so many graphs out there, like from the companies that are doing it because they're super proud of it.
Yeah.
It show you it's almost like a grid. It's like a screen that blankets us. It's like a tarp, you know, that goes over us. So that's why there's no getting away from it. And the other thing now, there's so many satellites, like hundreds of thousands of satellites at this point. But the what's it called? Starlink, the Elon Musk group of satellites that are the 5G. There's several thousand at this point. But the thing is, they go around and the idea is to blanket the entire Earth. So places where maybe there aren't cell towers, or, you know, people weren't able to get coverage. Now, the idea is everywhere, anywhere on Earth, you can have cell coverage. And the reason is because there is this blanket, this grid, the screen, canopy, whatever you want to call it, around the entire Earth at this point. So that's what we mean by there's no getting away from it. So you have to do everything you can to protect your body, and we will talk about that at the end. But it affects so you know, if you listen to our Causes the Cure podcast, or we talk about that before, because that's the whole premise. You know, your external environment affects your internal environment. So everything going on with your external environment, right now we're talking about EMFs, but it affects your internal environment, everything going on within your body. And that's how your body then starts to break down. And if you think of it like, so like Jenny was saying, everything has a frequency, including us. Everything in the natural world has a different frequency. The Earth has a frequency, everything. So that's everything that's a natural frequency, and we connect to that. That's what we know. That's what our body naturally connects to, and we need. But all of these other frequencies we're talking about, those are artificial frequencies. So if you think about it, it's always a mirrored effect. So you've got the natural frequencies and the artificial frequencies. So that's what we're going to be talking about, the two things.
And really, man-made.
Yeah, anything man-made, we could call artificial.
Right. It's
and
not like
they have a negative frequency.
Right. They're not fake. They're really there. They're just not naturally found.
Right. And if you think about like my desk sitting right here, this is energy. It is moving fast enough. The energy is moving fast enough that to me, it looks solid. I can feel it. It's solid. But if you stepped back from, you know, physics standpoint or crazy, I don't know, you know,
quantum physics, you know, it's the easy subject.
Right, quantum physics standpoint, this is moving. It's energy. It's just moving, and it's vibrating so fast that we perceive it to be solid. So even these man-made, not even man-made frequencies, it could be a man-made artificial food coloring, you know, anything that is man-made or artificial. It's plastics, yeah, anything. These chemicals, everything that's adding to our total body burden still has a frequency, because everything is energy. That's been proven. And again, it sounds crazy because we can't see it, you know? Right. So people tend to not believe it, but it is true. So just keep that in mind. Also, you know, like just an example, if you walk in, I think everyone can understand this. If you walk into a room, so you walk into a room full of people and immediately, like a funeral, say you don't know this person, but you came to this funeral because you were invited for someone else. You walk into that room, you feel the energy, and it is a low energy, and you immediately, like, you may want to cry, or you may feel bad, you know, because you take on that energy immediately. You can feel it, you just can. Or if you walk into a party and someone is in there that just is a super negative person, nasty person, nasty attitude, you can feel that. And you know that you have, if you think about it, you've been around people that you come in contact with and it drains you. Like, you will feel tired in their presence or just exhausted. You know, you can tell that maybe you don't even, you know, recognize what is happening, but they are draining your energy. And a lot of times it's low energy people, and they feed off of people that have more.
And not like, it doesn't have to be low energy, like tired or fatigued, but like that low frequency. So negative emotions, things like apathy, guilt, insecurity, fear, those are all really low frequencies. So the person themselves could be active and moving, or also tired and fatigued. But it's those low frequency emotions that drag you down. And it's not something most people think about, like the funeral thing. So if you're in a situation where everyone should be feeling a certain way because it's appropriate, that's why if someone walks in and they're all like, hey guys, telling jokes, laughing, it's discordant. Like everyone looks at them and feels like they don't fit, even though in a different situation that, you know, it would be fine. They're not doing anything wrong, but the frequency doesn't match. And you just don't even notice that that is what's causing that, you know, what feels off.
Right. And another example is if you are maybe down, or, you know, something's going on with you and you just don't feel, you know, whatever's going on with you. We all have those times, right? And all of a sudden you're around somebody that is super joyful and positive, and, you know, it brings you up. It's just that energy. And if you look at the crinoline, I think I always say that wrong, but photography, where you can actually see energy fields.
Right.
You can see the energy fields of people, plants, anything. You can see, like, if you look at two people, you can see their energy fields come in contact, and you can see whether one is pulling from the other, or if they're in balance, or, you know, the colors. It's really interesting. But
and even like our words match that without thinking. Like people talk about this without understanding. We say low for something that's sad or unhappy, and we say high for something that's good and joyful. You know, you're feeling down, or, you know, you're feeling up. Get up, get up, do things. So it's like innate understanding that we have, but when we start to think about it, it gets a little confusing.
I was thinking about the words today, because first of all, words have a frequency. And work with us, you know, we talk about this a lot. So words, if you're saying, I can do this, I am, you know, whatever, that's a higher frequency than this is terrible, I can't do this, I am, whatever it is. But also just wait, what did you just say? Because I just lost my thought.
How the words like hype up, go up, or down, low.
Yeah. So I was thinking about, like, healing. We talk about healing hands. People use that word all the time. And it's true, because our hands are healing. You know, if you go like this and then you go like this, you can feel that energy bubble in your hands. Or if you, like, if a bee stung me on the arm right now, I'd be like, ow, because your hand is healing. And, you know, we talk about a mother's touch. Well, yes, you know, mothers hold their babies, and that's very healing. Or we talk about a woman's touch. We use these words a lot. Or you talk about, oh, I just have no energy today, or I'm gonna go exercise. I have so much energy. But it is, we use these words all the time without even thinking about it. So now you can think about it. That we do. We have that innate ability. And it's another one of those innate abilities, like the innate ability of your body to heal. We have this innate abilities, but we have lost that connection. And so we don't understand it anymore, but it's there. We've always had it. So yeah, I just wrote down, we already talked about all this, but I just said that frequency is either adding to health or adding to disease. And remember, everything is energy, and we are all electrical beings, including the planet, like everything. And so for some examples of that, because a lot of times people are like, electrical beings, that's woo-hoo, that's woo-woo stuff, but it's not. Think about your heart has electrical impulses, right? That's what pumps your heart. Your heart actually is a whole electrical circuit. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you look into that. And what do you do if your heart stops?
Zap.
You with electricity to get it started. That's what that's what they do. Or what do they do if your heart is stopping? They put in a pacemaker. What's a pacemaker? It's a little device that puts out electric impulses.
Yes.
So think about that. Also, we have our nervous system, which is an electrical system. I know what I was going to say like 15 minutes ago when I thought I was going to say, if you've ever done the experiment where you can stand in a circle with several people, and one of you holds a light bulb and you hold hands, the light bulb can light. Or the potato experiment.
Right. I was going to say that, or the potato, or you can do it with certain plants besides potatoes.
But these are like grade school experiments, but it shows you that we're all electricity, and there's a circuit. There's also the experiment where you put a probe into a tree, which I don't like that because it's disruptive to the tree, but they put a probe into a tree with a light or something on the end, and it lights up. Or you can stand, don't recommend this, but it works. You have 3 or 4 people, and one person holds on to an electric fence, and it's the person on the end that gets zapped, because you are electric conduit, you all the way in, and the guy on the end doesn't have the grounding, so he gets zapped. So anyway, those are examples. I got sidetracked earlier, but it came back to me.
But those are real world examples that also show that even though we are all energy and we have these electrical systems, that if that electricity isn't at the frequency or the levels that we need, then it can be dangerous. Like you said, the person on the end gets zapped because they're not grounded. Or, if you get hit by lightning, like that's too much electricity, you can see that and you can understand that it's bad for you. So think about all these frequencies that are not as acutely dangerous, because, that cell tower, if you walk near it, you're probably not going to have that big zap that throws off all your electrical systems, but it's happening all the time, that low chronic exposure.
Right. And if you've been listening to us, we talk about acute and chronic all the time. And I wrote this down for later, but I'll finish what I was saying earlier when then I got sidetracked again. Okay, we talked about the heart being an electric system, right? So then the nervous system, the brain, it's all electricity. It just is. And you can go really deep on that. Our cells, and we talk about cellular energy all the time. So the mitochondria of your cells are the powerhouse, energy powerhouse for your cells. If you have low cellular energy because of disease, you're going to feel it.
Yep.
That's where our energy comes from, but it's an electrical impulse. Also, our aura, like we were talking about earlier, where you can see with the crinoline photography, that's our energy field. We all have an energy field. And here's an example of that. So Jenny and I did a holistic fair a long time ago. And this is actually the day that we met Dr. Duquette, which is interesting. So we were there, and my daughter Teo was 10 years old, I think, at the time, and she was with us. And we had our auras pictures taken. And Jenny's and Tea's were these vibrant colors. I remember Jenny's was purple, like purple, violet, so pretty, her whole field. And then Tea's was bright emerald green and a little bit of orange, but bright, bright colors. Mine, and this is when I was really sick and felt terrible. And my brain fog was terrible. And I was in so much pain.
And you had emotionally like very little support and was very negative.
Right. And so, but we were still doing what we're doing now. But my picture was all yellow, which means joy, because that is my personality. I tend to always be, but my picture, it was creepy, wasn't it? It was
it really was.
It was translucent. So Jenny's and Taya's were bright, 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 vibrant colors. Mine literally was almost, it was like a ghost.
Yeah, it was like ours looked like color, like someone had colored in around us, and yours looked like a filter over you, if that makes sense.
That's a good example. Yeah, theirs was a very definite color, like a crayon. Mine was literally like a ghost, so translucent, but you could see that it was yellow. Like my field was yellow.
It was pretty.
It was pretty, but it was creepy. And I was like, what is weird and wrong with me? But then later I learned about what that was, and it was because my body was so sick. My body was so diseased.
Yeah, like that was when they first were doing, like you could use the cameras to see the energy, and we thought it was cool, but it was just not, it wasn't something we really understood as far as the energy and the frequency and the colors. So we figured that out later. But even without like this background information we're talking about right now, you could still look at it and realize that it was not good.
It was odd, but now that we know so much more, yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh, that just showed. I mean, I knew how I felt, but that also showed that my frequency was so low at that time. I was almost disappeared, which probably means almost dead. Just kind of scary.
Yeah.
I was going to do this example I found. Hold on. This is a good spot to give it to you. So I came across this study. I'd never heard of this before, but this woman had done a study. So somebody came out in the early 1900s with a machine that could read frequency. So their purpose at the time was reading frequency of the human body and then also plants. So the human body, a healthy person was about 100 on the scale. 70 to 90, pretty healthy, 100 if they were really healthy. A very diseased person that was sick in their study came out to like a 15 on the scale. But anyway, this woman recently, I think it was like in the last 10 years, she did a study on fabrics. And because she had seen in the, well, not the Bible, but different religions, like the Bible.
Maybe like Quran or the Torah.
Torah, that's what it was. In the Torah, it says, do not ever combine linen and wool. So she used a machine to test the combination of linen and wool. And then she tested a lot of different fabrics. So that was her study. But I just thought it was interesting just to show you, because wool and organic linen are very healing fabrics. So, thousands of years they've known this, and to put on the body for healing, so that it's like 5,000 on the scale, on the energy scale, frequency scale. But together, they're both 5,000. So if you blend them together, it's now a 0, which would be this frequency, which is interesting. And it's interesting they knew that thousands and thousands of years ago. But
like there's lots of things in books like that, or just general information like passed down that people may not have known why. They did not have a machine to measure frequency. They didn't even have that basic one that gave them a scale, of 0 to 100. They didn't have that, but they knew from the way they felt and seeing the effects of it that there was something wrong. So then they make rules. They don't tell you why, but they know it's bad, and a lot of things are like that. And it's sometimes people take things a little too literally without thinking about the why behind it. I mean, this is in all areas. Women who were considered witches is because if you look back, they actually understood sanitation. So they were cleaning and sweeping more often than other people. So they would get sick less. They had cats around to get rid of vermin, which carried disease. So they got sick less often. So we tie these things with like magic, but that's where it's coming from. Like we understood that. We might not have understood why, but we trusted our instincts more so in the past to just understand this is bad, this is good.
That innate intelligence we were more in tune with, and our bodies were more in tune with to know that this doesn't make you feel good. People have lost that innate intelligence connection. They've lost that intuitiveness with their bodies. And that's what we try to bring back so that you can, because you should be in charge of your own health. You should have those, but we've just lost that. But other parts of the study, I'll just go quick because we're going to run out of time as usual. But she tested organic cotton. So that was 100. So that was where the healthy person was 100. But if you colored that cotton, you dyed it, even with, or like a botanical dye, it brought it down a little bit. If you dyed that organic cotton with a synthetic dye that most clothing or fabrics are dyed with, it brought it way down. Also anything like, polyester, rayon, acrylic, spandex, lycra, viscose, nylon, all of those fabrics that most clothes are made out of now, and cotton that is not organic, very low, like a 15, 0 to 15. And that's where that very diseased person was also. And so you also think about something that she learned in her study. And again, we've talked about this before because we know this, but studies are good because people have that mentality now that everything has to be based on factual science, but these lower vibrational fabrics actually pull your energy and they actually add to disease, whereas these higher vibrational fabrics actually add to health. And then these very super high vibrational are actually very healing. But this is just one example, but it shows you exactly what we're talking about. Anything that's artificial or man-made is a very low frequency, and that is going to add to disease, and that is going to also kind of suck on your energy. Whereas nature, that we are supposed to be in tune with, will add to your health, will help with health and healing, just that frequency. So hopefully this was just a good example of
that's why grounding works. That's why people, trending is like forest bathing. Like even people who don't understand the scientific side of it, they understand that if you go out into a place which has very few electronics, very little exposure, you can't get away completely because it's outside of the earth. But you will then harmonize essentially with those frequencies, and those are natural higher frequencies. So you feel better because your energy comes up, you get to the frequency you should be in, and it's all around you because it's bathing. We're forest bathing. They're not going in tubs, they're just in the forest. And then you come back into a city, and you've got all the electronics and more exposure and more cell towers, and then your frequency comes down to match what's around it. So that's why people always have, if they're from the city, their healthy trip is out to the woods or the beach, away from those things. Like we've always done that.
we've talked about a lot of times where anything in nature, like the ocean or trees, have negative ions, and then anything that is artificial, or if you are sick, they have positive ions, and those ions neutralize each other. And it's not exactly the energy, but it's the same thing. Anything in nature is beneficial to our health. Anything that is artificial or man-made is detrimental to our health. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
You find something that's artificial that you can prove to me that is a benefit to your health. You can't. I mean, you really can't if you start looking at it. Also, back to my other topic about why proving that we are electrical beings. I mean, just to think about it is, okay, so we talked about our heart, our nervous system, our aura, our energy field, but also your muscles. That's how your muscles work. They have electronic response that contracts and moves your muscles. Like if I took my pen and stabbed myself in the arm, I immediately go, oh, or if you got a sting, oh. But
or people are pretty familiar with the TENS machines. So anybody that's had therapy, muscle issues, they put those and they zap those muscles to get them moving.
Right, exactly. And something just to think about is the nervous system is this electrical communication, right, to all areas of your body, all organs of your body, but it is not as fast as that muscle response. So it's been proven that your fascia that covers all of your muscles in your body have an electrical system too that immediately will, without you thinking, move that muscle, and it is an electrical response. So just keep that in mind. We are definitely electrical beings. Even if that sounds woo-woo to you, it's not.
Right.
Something else to think about is we are also at least 70% water, right? And so is everything else on the planet, plants, animals,
the planet itself.
But yeah, and that's an interesting fact, just that we are all about 70% water, everything. But what is water? It's a conductor, right? You don't drop your hair dryer in your bathtub when you're in it, or you die. I mean, because it conducts electricity. So if you think about, we are bathed in all of this wireless electro frequency all the time, and our bodies are water. It's going to excite the cells in our body like a microwave. That's how a microwave works. If you put food in a microwave, the way it heats it up, there is no heat. It just excites the cells really fast. And that friction, I mean, you can go like this and you feel the warmth in your hands. The friction of the cells that are excited because of the microwave, that's how it heats your food. So it's the same thing. If our bodies are water, think about that. If you're constantly bathed in this electro frequency, electro radiation, it's going to excite the cells in your body, which is going to add to disease. Also, one other thing that I thought of this morning, we are also full of heavy metals. That's one of the things that we're very toxic at the moment. And if you are not healthy, you are not able to detox those. And heavy metals are also a conductor of electricity, right? So you've got all of that on top of it too. And the way we get the heavy metals is the chemicals, the pollution, what they're spraying in the air. What they're spraying is one of the things is aluminum. And so we just are, and again, it's everybody. You can't.
The issue with the metals, so the metal in the water are conductors, but metal attracts. So it's like an antenna. So you're becoming an antenna when you have all of this metal. So you're bringing more to you.
Right. Yeah. And then you can go into the magnetic fields as well. And it's kind of the same topic too, but we won't do that today. But the other thing just to think about is that babies and children are more susceptible to all of this stuff because they're still developing, they're still growing. The brain is not done developing until you're like 24 or something. Anytime you're giving, these kids are bathed in it anyway, but they've got smart devices and diapers to sense the diapers. They've got smart monitors, all this stuff, and it is affecting.
And schools are just covered in Wi-Fi now because that's how they're using, not books, electronics.
Yeah. So for children, it's causing serious health issues, and it's like behavioral issues, cancer, developmental issues. There's a lot, but it's affecting, us as well. And so I just had some examples of, and we kind of talked about this already, but again, it's that mirrored effect. So there's natural frequencies, there's artificial frequencies. So examples of natural frequencies, everything in nature, we already talked about crystals. I think a lot of people realize that, but it's just part of nature. That's why. Music, that's a good one to get a visual on, because if you think about like you strum your guitar, right? You get that beautiful music, you put your hand on the strings, the vibration instantly stops and the music instantly stops. That note stops.
Or if you keep them, like think of something out of tune, the frequencies aren't correct, they don't match, so they sound bad. And we know that.
We've used that one a lot too. If you think about nature as this beautiful symphony of everything in tune and perfect, and it's very pleasing to the ear, as opposed to anything that's artificial or man-made. It's like everything is out of tune and it's very abrasive to the ear. Same kind of thing. But yeah, so music, thoughts, words, water, us, trees, plants, animals, the Schumann resonance, the resonance of the earth is an energetic being as well. And so that's why grounding is important, because we are in tune with that. Also things like bees have the exact same frequency as the Schumann resonance.
Cats purring.
And that's why oftentimes, and in the past, people have known that cats are healing, but because their purr is the exact same frequency as the earth. Butterfly, eating whole food is that frequency that resonates with us, that matches. Eating artificial foods doesn't match. That's one of the reasons why it adds to disease. And then the artificial frequencies, long list, smart meters, wireless devices, all smart meters, all wireless devices, satellites, cell towers, electrical wires, giant electrical grids, you see those. Solar panels, that's a big thing now. Wind farms, those all have really negative EMFs. Wi-Fi, electric cars, anything that's artificially made, artificial food. You go to the airport, you go through the scan, an airplane itself, any kind of antennas, mammograms, x-rays, CT scans, MRIs, all of those things.
And they know that this is cumulative, especially when you're talking about like radiation, which is a frequency, a type of energy exposure, because they have those little cards. Like my grandpa would tell me a story, he was in the army. And at one point he was the person in charge of checking the radiation cards. So like each person had one of these things and they had them on them. And anytime they got an x-ray or they had to go in the machine, it would like increase it because of the radiation exposure. And then if your card got too high, then you couldn't do it anymore. You couldn't get any more x-rays, or you couldn't be in that area with whatever machine or weaponry they were using, kind of thing. So we know that there is a cumulative effect. And we also know that there are acute effects on developing systems, because if you're pregnant, you can't go buy x-ray machines or anything with radiation. So we have solid evidence of this.
If you look back in history, not that far back, the people that founded the x-ray machine, they were playing with it all the time, and it was so cool because they could see their bones and this and that. They all died from cancer. There's that. There's a lot of wireless chips and everything now. Even they're spraying smart dust. They've been doing that since 2015. All of those, anything that's wireless like that. And I already talked about the telegraph. But another example, just last week, we had that solar storm, right? It was a category 5 or 6 solar storm, which a solar storm means high energy coming in, but that's still a natural energy that our bodies recognize, right? But at that same time, HARP was doing an experiment which is why everyone was seeing the northern lights. They were doing an experiment, probably because of the solar storm,
Right.
whatever the experiment was, but that was using the big ionospheric heaters that puts out a ton of negative artificial EMFs. So we had this good solar storm coming in, but that at the same time. So it was again that.
Right. And if you think of that, like that, we know that we have solar storms. We know that the sun is a great ball of energy and sometimes it throws extra energy at us. It's never caused like human disease. It's always been an issue with electronics and systems and devices that, so you can see this natural energy is not in frequency with all these artificial things.
Talk about the power grid going out or that kind of thing because of the solar. And that's exactly what Jenny's talking about. It's not the same frequency. It can knock it out, but it doesn't bother us. You
Right.
might feel, something, but it's still a good symbiotic natural relationship, if that makes sense. What else did we want to say? Oh, about the acute and the chronic. I kind of touched on that earlier,
Yeah.
but acute symptoms from like the EMFs or the radiation would be a dermal, like skin issues. So like burning, redness, tingling, pain. That's acute. It happens immediately.
Right.
They use that on crowd control. They've done that for years where they use this very high frequency and you can see videos where it just pushes people back and they're in pain, and that's acute. You can feel it right then. Right. Whereas chronic, and again, chronic disease, chronic symptoms of actually EMF sensitivity has a name now that diagnoses. So it's called electromagnetic hypersensitive syndrome, EHS. And they do like to say that you're imagining that, which is not true. But they also call it the invisible toxin because it is a poison, just like any chemical or anything else. But like we talked about earlier, you can't see it. But the chronic symptoms from that are fatigue. You're just low energy. You can't concentrate, GI problems, heart palpitations, vertigo, tinnitus, which is ringing of the ears, neurological issues, headaches, migraines. But what does that sound like? That sounds like the same symptoms from the GI podcast. Right. Or anything else. So again, you can't pinpoint one thing. You can't pinpoint one topic. You have to take that holistic view. If you feel like you are electrosensitive, you probably are. And people that are electrosensitive, like I am really sensitive to it, you can be on two ends of the spectrum. So you can be really sensitive to it because your body is sick and diseased and it's just so much coming in and that total body burden, overflowing. Or you can get to the point where you're so healthy and in tune with the good, the natural side of things that you really are intuitively can feel that. Right. It's kind of both ends of the spectrum, which is where I would like to hope I am right now. But then we'll go over, we always get to the what you can do and it's like super fast because we're at the end of time, but there's a lot you can do. Clearly you need to be healthy. You need to get healthy. You need to optimize your health. And to do that, is what we always say, we always do. You have to resolve the internal dysfunction in your body, as well as address this environment outside of you that's causing that internal dysfunction in the first place. Those are the two big things. All the little things you can do. This is what I wrote down, but there's so many more things. So I've got to wear EMF protection. If you have to go somewhere like a hotel, or maybe you work for State Farm, some kind of corporate place where you have to go in and you have no control over that. They have necklaces, orgonite necklace, different things that you can put on your body, shungite, to kind of help mitigate that.
Right.
If at home you can have an EMF meter. I don't know if you guys seen me do videos on that before. I like to do that just because it's interesting. EMF meter is a good thing in your house to go around and find those high, where
exposure areas,
areas of your house so that you can do something to mitigate that. Turn off your router at night, hardwire all of your, like my laptop right now is hardwired. Limit just your wireless devices. There's so many devices that are just cool.
Yeah.
And that's another reason people don't like to address this topic, because it's exciting and cool. And we had somebody be really upset one time because she thought the Internet of Things was the coolest thing ever. And we're like, but
Right. I mean, something can have beneficial uses and still be unhealthy. Like, we're not saying that there is no upside to internet connectivity. Obviously, we use that. We're here live, but you have to at least understand this concept and take stock of your environment, just like everything else, just like other chemical toxins, just like your mindset. You need to understand the concept, then take a look where you are, what you have control over, and then decide with, some things, obviously, if you're not even using, a lot of devices come with internet connectivity and you don't even use it. So you understand you can just shut that off, no big deal. But some things people find either very cool or very convenient. And you have to kind of weigh, is this convenience factor really worth this health bad side of it? And you got to make those decisions for yourself. But if you don't understand the concept and you don't take stock of where you are, then you are just, there's no empowerment there. You're making a choice to have that exposure by not taking a step to reduce it.
Always remember, we talk about this all the time, but you are either making a choice to create your life, or somebody or something else is creating it for you. You either have to make that choice, and like Jenny said, you have to understand in order to make the choice, or you're just floating along and you're just floating down the river that somebody else has made for you. So yeah. Just being in joy, doing things that are joyful to you, being in, joy, love, happiness, gratitude, all of those are really high frequencies. So kind of keeping yourself in those frequencies. Remember, words have power. So
yeah,
you feel low energy, don't say, I am low energy. Say, I am working towards feeling more energized, something like, what else? Don't wear your phone on your body, get a Faraday bag for your phone. Don't give wireless anything to kids. Don't have wireless stuff in their rooms. That's a big one. There's so much of, connect to nature on as many levels as you can. That's a huge one. Even just your mind, like saying, like I've been saying since the beginning of the last 4 years. I don't know why I started saying this, but it resonates with me. So I constantly am saying, I do not consent. And I like literally make my mind connect to, I call it the Gaia grid, because it's the natural grid, because we are bathed in that frequency too. And I do not consent to connecting with this other grid that they have put over us. So that's just my own mind. If you think that's crazy, that's okay. You don't do that. But your mind is powerful, right? Where you're putting your thoughts. Just the EMF protection, like we talked about, grounding, forest bathing, lower your amount of devices in your house. Like we don't even have Wi-Fi here. Everything is hardwired again. And it's a little bit of a pain to do that, but once you do it, it works. It's fine. It's actually faster internet connection. There's just there's so many things you can do, and I'm sure you can look this up, or if you work with someone or work with us, there's lots more things that you can do, but just make sure that you're doing everything in your life that you can to lower that load on your body and in your household. And just remember, it's a cumulative effect. It's a key. So yeah, there's a lot, and hopefully this helped. And if you have questions.
Yeah, so hopefully you understand how everything is energy, how that relates to frequency, and how frequency can be both positive and negative. I mean, they even use those words, positive and negative, with electricity. Yeah, and how, you want to increase exposure to those higher positive frequencies, decrease exposure to those lower artificial frequencies, and that will impact your health either way. You're always going towards or away health. So this is the same type of situation.
Example that I just thought while you were talking. So we mentioned your heart is an electrical system. It uses electrical impulses to pump your heart. Your heart is a pump. Think how many people wear their cell phone over their heart in their pocket. In fact, remember
like a guy.
Yeah.
I'm like, how would I do that? Oh, like in my bra? Like people do that. I don't, but people do that.
Actually, there's so many people that have cancer, and it's like a rectangle over right here because people wear it in their bra. But remember when we were at the Trinity Health Freedom Expo the last time? This cardiologist came up to us and he was talking to us about, health and all of that. Like, you're wearing, and I said something to him and he probably thought I was nuts, but he was wearing his cell phone in his pocket over his. I couldn't believe it. So think about that. We were talking about frequencies matching up, and if they don't match up, how that's really negative effect on you. So that constant pulsating frequency of the cell phone over your heart, which is an electrical frequency, it's not a good fit. So anyway, that's just an example, but there are so many things you can do. So always feel empowered, even though there's so much out of our control. So remember, you always take back your power where you have control, where you have choice, and there's so much that you can do. So yeah, hopefully this helped.
Yeah. And as always, if you're in our Facebook group, you can ask questions. If you're watching this on the replay, right in there in the chat or the comments. If you are catching this on replay, you can always reach out on our social medias. If you watch this on our YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe so you know when the new ones come out, and like and share.
Have a great day, everybody.
Yes. Bye.